Welcome to Inner Fire Motivation Story. Subscribe my channel, like and share my video.
Jason Carter had always been a runner, not just in sport, but in life. He ran from responsibility, from pain, from failure. And when things got hard, he quit. That was his pattern. In high school, he dropped out of the track team after one bad race. In college, he left halfway through his second year when he failed a major exam. Even in his relationships, he left before people could see his flaws. "Better to leave before I disappoint them," he used to say. By 28, Jason was working a job he didn't care for, in a city he didn't like, surrounded by people he didn't know. One evening, after another meaningless day, he sat alone in his apartment scrolling through social media when he saw a post. "Sign up for the Iron Soul Marathon. 26 miles of mountains, mud, and meaning." The words meaning and marathon shouldn't have gone together, but something inside him stirred. Maybe it was the word Iron Soul. Maybe it was the fact that he'd never finished anything hard. Of those moments when something inside you whispers, "It's time." Without thinking too much, he clicked register. The training was brutal. Jason hadn't run in years, and his body reminded him every day. On day 1, he barely made it a mile before his lungs were on fire. On day 5, he pulled a muscle. On day 12, he wanted to quit. But something was different this time. Instead of quitting, he rested. He iced his leg. He got up the next day and walked. Then jogged. Then ran. One evening, as he was limping home from a rough session, he saw an old man sitting on a park bench. The man looked up and said, "You training for the Iron Soul?" Jason blinked. "Yeah, how'd you know?" The man smiled. "You've got the limp of a beginner and the eyes of someone who hasn't given up yet." Jason laughed. "I guess that's true." The old man looked him square in the eye. "Listen, son, the marathon isn't won in the first mile. It's won in the last one. Most people to push through the last mile." Jason nodded. He didn't know why, but those words stayed with him. Race day. The morning of the marathon was cold and gray. Mountains loomed in the distance, wrapped in fog. Thousands of runners lined up at the start. Jason stood there, heart pounding. The first miles were okay. He paced himself, drank water, and stayed focused. At mile 10, the terrain turned steep. Mud clung to his shoes like glue. At mile 15, his legs started to cramp. He thought about quitting, but he remembered the old man's words. The marathon is won in the last mile. At mile 20, runners began to drop out. Some sat on rocks, gasping for breath. Others cried. Jason kept going, each step heavier than the last. At mile 24, his vision blurred. His legs felt like wood. A voice in his head allowed, "Not this time." The last mile 25 was agony. Every muscle screamed. His lungs burned. But Jason kept moving. One step, then another. And then he saw it. The sign, mile 26. You're almost there. Spectators lined the path. Some clapped, some cheered. But Jason didn't hear them. All he could hear was his own heartbeat and a voice in his mind, not yelling this time, but whispering with pride. You didn't quit. He crossed the finish line, not with a sprint, but with quiet, stubborn determination. He fell to his knees, tears in his eyes, not because he won, but because, for the first time in his life, he finished after the race. Jason didn't become famous. He didn't set a record. But he changed. He applied again to college, and this time, he finished. He mended broken relationships. He ran more races. Not because he needed to prove anything, but because he discovered the truth. The hardest battles are the ones you fight with yourself.
Bye-bye to Inner Fire Motivation Story. Subscribe my channel, like and share my video.